All right, hello everyone and welcome back. Let's continue along and get this piece done. We're going to be able to finish everything off on this right side, mirror it over, and then we'll call it apart. But that should keep us busy for quite a while. So last time we finished everything that's yellow minus this top piece, as well as this circular part. We opened it up so the ribbon can slide through, and we'll get to that in just a second. But we also finished all these sort of connection pieces over here, and as I was looking into some more reference, it looks a little bit more complex. I like how it has these different parts breaking into it, so I'm going to do a little bit of improv to get these shapes back in here. I'm going to keep this tube the way that it is. I'm just going to sort of add additional parts where it would naturally be connecting. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to duplicate that, scale it down, and the reason I'm doing this is just because, yeah, it's very, very simplified, and I'd like to add a bit more complexity to it so it seems a bit more believable. There's some more mechanisms going on. So let's move our pivot down here and snap this down. And yeah, I'm essentially just adding pieces to it that kind of make it look like there's more going on. So I don't want this long tube to be lasting too long that's going through everything, so I'm going to even pull this down, kind of getting this sort of layered effect. Ours is going to be a little bit different, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and hollow this guy out. So I'm selecting all the faces on the top and the bottom, hitting Control E and going to our scale tool and bringing that in. We can just get that loosely onto the shape. Once again, this is all just sort of minor details, so we know that we're going to be able to bake this down. So I don't mind setting it up this way and just bridging them together to get our nice pipe. But let's add some bolts and some stuff sticking through. And then we're just going to duplicate this one down here, just to keep it nice and easy for us. If we want to make this a bit more complex, we could even like slice through the middle like this, and I'm just going to select that ring and shrink the size. Just because the edges aren't even on the top, it wasn't letting me select all the way through, but we could bevel that. And then just to add some more shapes, just extrude it a little bit. And just like, yeah, just gives it, you know, a bit more going on. So it's not such a boring shape. But yeah, let's get back to this guy. So I just want to add these little screws in, and then there's something similar at the bottom, so we can just reuse this. And then we'll move back on to the next part. But for this, super simple. We're just going to add some booleans, and then plug them with some screws. So let's snap this so it's level. Rotate it 90 degrees. And it doesn't really have to be perfectly in the middle or anything, so I'm not going to add a cut. The middle height wise, that is. Let's put like one at the bottom, duplicate, rotate. For this one, I'm going to shrink it down. Just add some variety. And just sort of find another place where it's nice to line up. Something like that. I'm making sure they're going all the way through so I can just add stuff to both sides. I'm going to combine these before we do a boolean, just so we only have to do it once. Let's freeze all our transforms and history on these guys. Bring up our good pal, the DC Bool Manager, and do our first boolean. Yeah, it's cutting all the way through, which is nice. Clean up, delete history and base objects. Very simple cuts. And we can plug those. I don't want standard screws. I want something a bit more poppy, like what we have going on in the reference image. So I'm going to open up, see what screws I can use. Let me just find a place to put these. I might just go for something like this just because I know it's different and I can sort of extrude it out a little bit. I'm gonna rotate that 90 degrees. Make it red so we don't forget about it. Just snapping it to various vertices to make sure we remember it, or rather to make sure it's totally centered. So I have that sticking out a little bit, which I like. We can just duplicate that with a Control D, bring that to the other side, and rotate 180. So this is all going to be baked down anyways. But nice. As for these guys, I'll just use a normal screw. Chances of anyone even like looking at that specific piece is so tiny, so I don't mind it being like this. It's nice to have a lot of repeating parts throughout, and these screws are obviously placed completely throughout our entire thing, so it's nice to keep that consistent. Just nuzzling that in there, seems to be good. I'm going to freeze transforms on this guy so I can confidently just rotate it 180 and know that it'll be lined up. Cool. So yeah, I just want to duplicate that and bring it down to the bottom. Just move my pivot down here, snap it, should be good to go. We're gonna have to recenter the pivots on all these guys though. Right. And then yeah, just to make it a bit more interesting, I'm gonna add a cut about halfway, bevel it, because you can kind of see it here. But there's like a thicker part to it, so I'm just gonna extrude that. I kind of like how it looks extruded in with a minus 0.05. Something along these lines. So I'm going to keep it like that, and we're going to call that part done. Let's go ahead and move on to this contraption. So referring to this guy again, it just kind of seems to be this sort of metal piece that hooks around, holds this turny piece, and has like the ribbon feeding into it. So obviously that's a bit simplified, but we can still work with that. Like this, for example, seems to be set up pretty properly. So we can just kind of have a curved piece that just stops here, and then these guys are just resting on top. So that's simple enough to put together. Just trying to think of the best way to do that. Delete this piece. Pull this guy in a little bit, and then we can extrude it out and rotate it like 45 degrees and have it I'm gonna bevel this. Yeah, so I want a nice smooth. Maybe that's not quite it. Let's bring this back. Instead, we could add a cut and just sort of have a thin layer coming out. I'm just going to gradually move this and rotate. And I'm just trying to see what's going on here. So that's kind of the setup they have. But it kind of seems that this piece that's coming out is just to hold the ribbon. This rounded piece is actually welded to the bottom plate. So that gives us something more to work with. In that case, I'm going to want this to be a lot thinner. So I'm just going to cut that again. Let's just do very chunky extrudes and rotates. And then we just kind of want it resting out here. And of course this needs to be smoothed out a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and bevel these. Just sort of mess with the vertices so they're a bit more averaged out. Square off the end there. And this is a nice place to sort of keep, yeah, like two pieces. Let's go ahead and we can even, if we grab these two faces and change our moving tool to, or our scaling tool to component. Maybe not. Just trying to make this part wider. If I grab this and change it to component, it's not totally accurate. I suppose we could grab these two and hit extrude. Yeah, and that'll do the trick. So now if we isolate this guy, so I'm just trying to have it be a bit wider at the end. Just so there's more room for everything to rest on. Merge those guys since we have vertices just chilling on top of each other. Let's pull that in and rotate it so it's a bit more averaged. And then we can extrude that wider piece out now. Perfect. Okay, that gives us plenty of room. So I'm just going to stick this guy here. We'll end up welding him somewhere along there. We're going to need our two pieces to sort of catch the ribbon though. So we're going to have one sort of at the opening and another one right about here, which makes me kind of want to reposition all of this. Let's go into our soft select. I'm going to hit B, which brings up soft select, which means that we can sort of, just by having some vertices selected affect other ones in a smooth transition. Like if I turn it up, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It averages the movement. So B is to activate it. And then if you hold B and click your middle mouse and drag it left and right, you're going to affect the radius of how much everything's being affected. And for some reason you can't get that. I think if you open up your move tools, you have soft selection here and you can turn it on and off and affect all that stuff. Because I know sometimes it's a little bit finicky and it doesn't work 100% of the time. So anyways, the reason I'm doing this is just so I can rotate this like so. Obviously this is not the final result I'm going for. That should go without saying. But I just kind of want to have these pieces lined up more with the pins that the ribbon's going to go through. And a quick way to get it to all work is just to use soft select. I turn it off really quick. Yep, so that's a bit more akin to what we're going for. These pins themselves, let's just weld them down onto the piece. Stick them through right now. Let's see if there's a clear shot of exactly. Yeah, this was one of those pieces where it's just like we kind of had to rely on that 3D model because it's so hard to see what's going on in there. That's okay. I'm just going to make it as I think would make sense. So a bit thinner, shorter, and then I'd imagine they'd be kind of tapered in a little bit. And then might even have like, oh, we got edges on this side. Weird. Let's get rid of those. But maybe even a bit of a sharper shape like this, just to indicate that something's supposed to go through. Something along these lines, but this is definitely way, way, way too wide of a gap. So we can close it off. And it kind of seems like in this 3D model it does something like this, which I kind of like. But for this one, what I'll do is change this to world first of all. Maybe have it extruding along the bottom. That way it has like more reason to be this wide at the bottom, and it gives it some more grip. And we can also bolt it down, which gives it a bit more believability. Let's rotate this so it's all flush. Nice. I'm liking how that looks from a distance. A ribbon can feed through there, going into that. It all kind of has a purpose. Let's see. Gonna have to clean up these verts here. Merging them. Let's go ahead and unify these guys with a Boolean. So I'm going to isolate them. Let's bring up our bools. Let's freeze transforms and history and everything first. And just do a union. Let's combine these guys first. Cool, so that's all one piece. Like I said, I think it'd be cool to have like a bolt going through there. Just as some like extra reinforcement. We can clean this up as well while we're at it. Oh, I didn't delete history and base objects. There we go. Okay, cool. I'm gonna have to do a little Boolean cut here as well, so let's get a cylinder on there. Very big cylinder. Let's scale that way down. Rotation seems to be off a little bit. Is this uneven itself? Yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Let's do a standard Boolean. Wait, we don't want union. We want it to be a difference Boolean. Delete history and base objects. We'll borrow a bolt. I'm just going to poke face here, just so I can quickly snap this guy to the center. Save us a little bit of time. But yeah, I like how that looks. Little details like that go a long way. That's why I wanted to stop and sort of set up this first part before we tackled this. But that's that piece. Now we need the little rounded piece to be faceted on. I think the best way to do this, and this is just, of course, building off of this idea, is it sort of has like a rounded piece on the bottom and the top and a piece going through. So I'm also going to borrow from that idea. And select all the faces on the top and bottom. We can extrude this in a little bit. Delete. We're just making another pipe here. Bridge these guys through. We can sort of anchor this somewhere. I'm going to scale this down, as well as the inside. So let's find a good place to mount this and how exactly we're going to do that. It would have to be close enough to where this ribbon's going through, so maybe probably should have just moved these over together. No, I want it to not really have like a kink, so I want to give it a bit more space. And the way that I'm imagining this is that, yeah, so this is welded to the bottom. And then this piece, how would this piece be welded? We could sort of break the mold a little bit and just sort of do something like this, where it's like a shell that it's weaving through into. I kind of like that idea. As long as it has room to breathe, because then this can be just attached to the bottom one. So we only need one piece to really be attached. Yeah, I think that works. So let's go ahead and combine these two pieces. So we're going to delete those faces on the bottom. Mesh combine. Let's select all the vertices on this component, but deselect the top ones. And we can snap this down. So those should be technically directly on top of each other. Merge vertices. Yep, and those should all be connected. Let's even grab these guys and snap them down. Same here. Merge that just to clean it up a little bit. Do the same up here. Nice. So we have this sort of like perfect little chassis for the inner piece. And then the inner piece itself, what I'm going to do is snap that a bit lower. Same here. And then we're going to have, I guess a bolt will cover it up pretty well. I don't know if a bolt makes sense, but I guess this is supposed to stay in place. So I guess, yeah, it works. We can definitely work with that. Cool. Yeah, and then let's just give this a different color so we don't forget about it. We'll also make it red. So our ribbon will be able to feed through that. Kind of want to shrink. No, maybe not. Just want to give this a bit more space. Just because, yeah, I feel like the top's getting a bit close, but I guess technically, and I'm just selecting all the pieces, holding right click off of it, and I go into vertices. We can play with the height of this. It doesn't have to be level. In this case, I might actually make it taller. So the ribbon can feed through there pretty easily. And another thing I want to do is rotate it. I'm starting to notice that maybe this wasn't the greatest idea because the ribbon has to go through this slot here. So we're going to have to make some adjustments to this mesh. Just the thickness of this, that's about it. I'm just selecting all the faces on the inside. This should be a pretty harmless, quick fix, but just scaling that up so a ribbon can slide through there. That's definitely more than enough room. That seems pretty accurate. I'm just thinking about now how this will connect. Which I guess means we're gonna have to scale that up as well as that. But now there's sufficient room, and now we have to find a way to sort of attach these two pieces. I think if this was like extruded out, and then we unified it, it would be fine. But there's going to be a pretty solid amount of cleanup. So let's go ahead and save really quick. Okay, we can go ahead with that. So selecting these two, union, new Boolean operation, delete history and base objects. That should be combined. I just wanted there to be no gap here, but we're going to have to delete quite a few edges to make this work. Control backspace. Make sure we do it that way so we get rid of the vertices as well. Yeah, just a lot of cleanup. It's a bit of a mess. Nothing we can't fix though. Just standard snapping and merging. Trying to simplify it wherever I can. Nice. Bottom looks like a disaster. We can try our best. I'm just snapping things to the closest appropriate edge. Yeah, that didn't take too long. Okay, we can merge that all up. Yeah, that should be good for that part too. So the top part's complete, which is nice. Looks pretty good from a distance. I'm happy with that. Let's move down. We just got to get a few more things in place, and then we're actually ready to duplicate it over. Right, because all of these are the same on both sides. These two are going to be a little bit different, but they're quick enough to throw together. Let's start by kind of making a similar situation with these guys over here. So I'm going to center pivot, freeze history, etc. And oh, before we do that, you have to combine this piece to this piece. Very important. I'm going to scale these in a little bit for the same reason as before, where I kind of want it to line up a bit better. And we're going to do another union. Freeze transform, delete history, union, new Boolean operation, delete history and base objects. A wee bit of cleanup to do, but really nothing serious. Definitely some funky stuff going on. It's very comforting to know that Zbrush is going to clean up a lot of this for us. Submerge all that. Still seems to be some weirdness. There's a face in here, yeah. Same with here, there shouldn't be a face there. I'm not quite sure why those are there. But one good thing to note is whenever you're doing UVs, you usually catch faces inside of faces. So we would have caught those guys anyways. But that's that piece. I feel like that might be about as complex as a single piece has really gotten for us. Just double checking that I merged those guys. Okay, cool. Right, back to this guy. And I'm going to go ahead and change the color of it because the blue is a bit distracting. So we're going to go back to gray. So duplicating this guy. I just want to make a quick ring and put it at the top. Just as we did before, selecting the faces on the top and the bottom. Extruding them. And bridging them through. Yep. Just because I want some sort of brackets. Something holding it all together. Should be able to just copy this over. Let's put it in a group. And by putting it in a group, we can grow and shrink it as one. So I'm just going to snap it to the bottom, unhide that, grow it like so. And let's rotate it a bit so it's not the same. I'm also going to grab these bottom faces and extrude them with a rotation to sort of match this bottom angle. Yeah, more like that. So it's more flush. Okay. Are these the exact same rotation? How did I end up doing that? Whatever. It makes sense, I guess, to be very similar. So I'm going to leave that as it is. Moving down, we have these various shapes that are kind of different things. Let's start with this tube. I feel like we definitely deserve a bit of an easier piece right now. I'm just going to delete the faces in the middle. I ended up duplicating this and putting it beside each other so it was an even distance. But let's just make it one. I'm gonna merge the vertices. I'm just turning this into one tube. If that seemed overcomplicated, sorry, but it's just a tube going from one end to the other, making sure it is symmetrical throughout the middle. Let's go ahead and make that gray so we know that it's done. Very few pieces left before we mirror this guy over. This guy seems like it was a bolt, so I'm just going to borrow this bolt. I'm just making a bolt and connecting it all the way through. A good way to do this is to just bridge and then delete the middle. And select these two guys so I can snap this to the middle. Yeah, the 3D model I'm looking at had a bolt here, which is easy enough. So I'm just going to put a bolt there. They have this one as just a large piece of metal, but this is another one of those cases where I'm like, okay, this is clearly a simplified, excuse me, a simplified version of what it should be. So let's give it a bit more visual interest. It's just one of those cases where it's like we cannot be certain on what is going on here. So I'm just going to give it like a lip. And then maybe add another edge loop, bevel that, and like extrude that back in or something. Just something to give it some sort of visual interest. 0.05 or something. Yeah, that works. And then this bottom one seems to be the only one that really matters. Looking at how this guy has it set up, it's like some sort of gear mechanic that's going on. Like, yeah, you twist this, which rotates this. Like, that all makes sense. So we're gonna have to make something similar to that. Spiky shape. We might have something to borrow from for that. I guess this is rotating horizontally rather than vertically, so it's not really the best case. Because the way that they have it set up is just like literally every other one being pulled down. Which we could do, but I kind of want to build off of that a little bit more. What I'm going to do is bring in a new cylinder. No, let's delete that. Let's bring in a new cylinder. Yeah, with 28 sides. I want a bit more geo for this. Actually, screw it. Let's just go create polygon primitives, cylinder. Give it 36. 36 subdivs. I'm going to snap it directly where the other one is, but delete the other one. Let's get this guy into position. So what I'm thinking for this is we could hollow it out. So I'm just extruding the bottom and scaling it, pushing that up. Now we can select every other edge. I have to say, this is something you can do in Max and that I was just shown by a coworker how to do. Like select every other edge, and I find it really useful. And I know there's definitely plugins for it in Maya, but I'm surprised that there's no default feature to sort of have that selected. I'm just essentially grabbing all those though. And rotating it a little bit. Just because I think that looks a little too uniform. But I don't know if that's any better. If I turn off wireframe, maybe just a little bit. We'll go with that. We'll shrink it down though, so it's kind of hugging the shape above it. Pull it up. Let's give it kind of like a ring around the lip. So I'm just adding an edge, flattening it out. Control delete to get rid of that. Kind of like the look of that. It kind of looks like it's acting as like a safety mechanism, like it's harder to get your fingers down into the Sharpie bits. Just make it red so we don't forget about it. Yeah, and essentially we just kind of have to duplicate this guy over. Put a corresponding one close to it. But I think we're gonna have to scale this one down quite a bit. Which doesn't really work with gear logic. It kind of has to be the same size, doesn't it? Let's get it back to the correct size. Yeah, if we shrink them together, should work. I'm also just going to push this up. I still like it hanging out the bottom. No one will ever see that, but that's okay. Yeah, and this is what I mean. Like now there's actually room for everything to fit into one another. With this, I kind of also, let's go into our side view. Kind of want to just select these teeth and pull them out a bit more. And then we can even extrude it all closer. Okay, I can work with that. It's definitely not my favorite, because I'm not exactly sure. It doesn't seem the most accurate, but we'll go with it for now. I don't even think you can see that piece unless you're looking through, unless you're looking through this grill. I think that's the only way you can see it. So I'm not too concerned with it, but if it does pose to be an issue, like these two pieces are pretty isolated and they're not attached to anything, so it's a quick fix. At the very least, what I want to do is cut a hole through it. Gotta make sure this is actually letting it go through. Nice. And then we have a lot of surface area here. So let's break it up by kind of like beveling this in or something. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Still not perfect, still not super happy with how that turns out, but who knows, maybe it'll be so hidden away you won't be able to tell, because realistically, even when you're looking at it, it's going to be like this close and you can't really see the part, and even if you're looking at it like this angle, it's only going to get about this close to the camera, and that stuff's like lost. You're not even looking at that. Okay, we'll leave that as it is. We have these pieces, which should be a lot quicker. And we have actual reference for these. So this wheel is essentially like a plate and then a wheel, and the wheel has a little handle on it. This plate I've seen depicted a bunch of different ways. I've seen some of them be closed off like this. I've seen some of them be more open and hollow like this. But this one definitely seems to be closed off. So we'll make it closed off, which is about as easy as a shape really gets. So let's start working on that. Let's pull it out a little bit. It just kind of seems like a hollowed out, rounded cylinder. I'm going to bevel the end like that, and then just hollow this out. The Control E, go to our scale tool. And that seems to be about it. Let's do an auto smooth. I mean, that's all I can really tell that it is. And then this, of course, punctures through. So let's carry that on. Just grabbing both sides, extruding, and we can bridge that. Just have that going through. So that's that one. And like I said, I think the other side also uses that same shape. So that's good. As for this wheel, it has teeth on it. We can borrow, I think this is the exact same shape, isn't it? Yeah, we can just borrow this. Should be the exact same gear. This one definitely seems to have like finer teeth to it. I'm trying to think if it's worth doing something like that though. Because say we just scale this up, delete this guy out. I suppose it's not exactly the same. Yeah, it's different enough. I'm just trying to think of a quick way to get this pattern. I remember how we did it for this guy. It's just going to take a lot longer. So, yeah. Okay, we're going to need a cylinder with a lot of subdivisions. Like 100. Snap it to where it needs to be. Let's get the scale of this guy right. Okay. So I'm not sure if you guys remember how we did it before, and maybe 100 is not even enough subdivisions, like 150. Yeah, and of course it's gonna mess up. Okay, let's get a new one in here. Let's do 150. Really, it doesn't even let me rotate and scale it. Weird. 150, and then we move it, and then we get it in place. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, yeah, I'm going to grab all the edges, hit Control E. We're going to add some thickness to it, but we're going to remember we did this before. Keep faces together as off. And I'm going to offset it just a tiny, tiny bit so we get a bit more of a gap. Minus 0.02. 0.02. Yeah, that's better. Thickness can be 0.1. Is this the same as these teeth? Let's just give it a shot, I guess. And they don't seem to be curved. They seem to be extending and pointing up. I think it should be, it's a little short on teeth, but it should be fine. Essentially, I'm trying to find a way to collapse these. Connect, transform component, detach, connect, fill hole, bridge. Merge and collapse. Merge border, collapse edge. There it is. So if you hold shift, right click, you can go to collapse edges. And I'm sure you can see what I'm getting at here. And I can just hit G. Now obviously this is going to take about 20 years to do. So we can go and just slice it in half. Slice it in half again. Except for, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think 150 works for that kind of stuff. We'll have to raise it to 160, which is going to give us more teeth anyway, so that's totally fine. Make sure to increase before moving. Okay, let's try that again. Where we extrude, thickness of 0.1, keep faces together is off, offset of 0.01, and we should be good to find a perfect cut through the middle and turn this into quarters. Yep. Just getting rid of these hanging pieces. Now this part, I mean, yeah, we could probably turn it into less than a quarter. We could cut it more, but I'm just going to collapse these edges the way they are. We're gonna have to select, what is that, 40? And I guess since they're so fine and small, it's going to be good because we can kind of just bake this down. Just going through, then we're gonna have to hollow it out like that. Cool. I'm going to start rotating this around now. So Control D, rotate, Control D, rotate, Control D, rotate. We can now mesh combine, merge vertices. And I was also thinking of grabbing all the edges in the middle, which are the points, and just, oh, I guess it would grab those as well. Fine, we can just leave that as it is. We're gonna have to get these. I think the easiest way to do that would just be a Boolean, honestly, that we just rotate around pretty evenly. So many edges though, this is such a nightmare. Let's go ahead, put this there. I have a feeling this Boolean is gonna just explode. Let's get that triangular shape going on. It's kind of a fat triangle shape. I'll bevel these guys. That's already beveled, I guess. I kind of want to add a cut through here. Fatten the whole thing out. And there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 360 divided by 5. Let's do some quick math here. Let's see. Man, this is taking so long. $360 divided by 5 is 72. Did we do that last time? I can't remember. Either way, we can just put our pivot in the middle. Rotate by 72. So yeah, I'm definitely going to want to change the shape of this a little bit to sort of accommodate for that. Let's shrink it and then pull that in a little bit and round this out. I'm going to even bevel that. Okay. Duplicate 72. I'm looking at this and it sort of tapers off, but not to this extent. So, whoa, that leads me to believe I should adjust this a little bit. Pull this down. Yeah, that seems to be a lot better. 72, duplicate, 72, duplicate, freeze transform, 72, duplicate, freeze transforms. 72. Let's mesh combine. I kind of want to shrink it all a little bit, so I'm going to go back to the normal selection with our vertices selected, just sort of scale it in a bit. Bring this back to world, and then scale out so it's closer to the rim. Let's go ahead and save before we do this Boolean, because we are dealing with a lot of edges and a lot of weird intersecting geometry. So let's quickly save. Okay, and let's hope that my computer doesn't blow up. Freeze transforms, delete history on both these guys. New Boolean operation. I still think we can make these guys smaller. And then I want to grab the verts in the middle, scale them in a bit. Then maybe grab all the verts on the edges. Scale them out. And let's grab these middle ones and play with them a bit as well. Kind of want to shrink them down. That's what it was. Okay. So now we can delete history and base objects. It's kind of gotten us the shape that we're looking for. Not really though. Okay. Really quickly. I like the actual shape of them, but I still think it's too big. I was just Control Z to get back into it. Let's just shrink this all down. And then go to Object. Just trying to round it out at the edges a bit more, and then I think that'll be it. Grab these secondary ones. I also think the tip is a little too fine, so I'm going to grab these secondary ones. I suppose these guys would probably be more in control of that. Yeah, we can make the ends a bit fatter this way. Okay, let's delete history. Something weird is going on here. Let's delete that. Okay. So we have our shape. Cool. If we smooth it out. It's a little bit crazy right now because of the edges, but it's definitely gotten us most of the way there. Okay, cool. Now we sort of have to give this handle, this little connection piece, and we're good to mirror everything over. So this should be pretty easy to throw together. First we need to puncture a hole through the middle so that it can go into the pipe properly. Just going to make sure it's the same thickness as this. So yeah, we have more than enough room for that. And then we also need a little puncture for the handle to go through. So this one I'm going to make a bit smaller, just put it up here. Combine these two. Freeze transform, delete history on all these guys. Do a Boolean difference. Delete history and base objects. Nice. Let's just get rid of this for now. So we can slot this into place. As for that handle, just like this guy, we can just borrow it from back here. I like how we're at that point now where we have all these parts that we can just sort of reuse. I'm going to poke face back here. And this is good if you're ever doing any different projects to sort of save some of these super reusable pieces, because you never know when you're going to have to make something with little nubs like this. Just like before, I'm just going to go into a different view just so I can rotate this and get it roughly correct. Okay, nice. Let's put a bolt on the other side just to plug it up. Cool, that's that piece. It does have this little cap thing on the end. Kind of just looks like something covering the very end. So let's extrude this through and even give it a bit more of a taper than normal. And then it just kind of seems like a pipe housed on the very end. So we've made a bunch of those this episode. I'm just going to bridge that through. Nothing new. Excuse me. And I can just extrude that down. Dramatically change this size. And make this smaller so it matches it a bit. Let's get rid of the blue. Nice. Man, we got a lot of cool stuff done getting that in there. Let's see. Kind of has this sort of screw sticking in there. You know me, I'm a sucker for these small details, so I'm going to throw it in. Let's push this forward so that we can give this guy a bit more space. Yep, let's get a cylinder on there. Cool, got a cylinder on there. Let's change our move tool to object so we can pull it out a little bit. Freeze transforms, delete history. New Boolean operation. Cleanup, delete history and base objects. Suppose we could probably push this a bit further in now. I just didn't want it puncturing through, that's all. And let's sort of nuzzle a bolt in there. Let's go with one of these guys, because I want it sticking out a little bit. Rotate it 90 degrees this way. Guesstimate how many it goes this way. Stick it out. And this is definitely one that I'd forget about if I didn't change the color, so let's make it yellow. Cool. Let's mirror this guy over. And that should more or less be it. Yeah, it should be symmetrical on both sides. The only difference is this sort of ring seems a little bit different. It honestly seems like most of them on the other side that we haven't done yet have more of this shape, which is what we made already. So I might just have it that way to sort of differentiate it. Or at the very least, it's smaller and seems to be rounded. I'm just going to go with the one that we've already made. But yeah, let's go ahead and delete all this placeholder stuff. I like when we can just duplicate everything over and save a lot of time. Okay. The hardest part here is just going to make sure we don't miss selecting anything. Yeah, I feel like we definitely accomplished a lot in these last two parts. This went by a lot faster than I expected. Leave no bolt unselected. Okay. Working our way through. We don't need to duplicate the pipe, obviously. It's continuing throughout. All right, and the way that I'm going to do this is just Control D. So it's a copy of everything, hit Control G, and it's going to put it in the middle. And I'm just going to do scale -1 on X. And that should duplicate it all over. Right, the pipe isn't perfectly centered. Oh, and we did forget something. We forgot this guy. Well, I guess I didn't really have to do that because we're going to delete that anyways. Oh, man. let's have this ring on the end. Freeze transforms, delete history. We'll have this sort of be like our end cap. Bevel that like we do on the other side. And then tuck it in a little bit. Nice. Like that looks good. I will say there's a bit of a difference where in the 3D model here, this side is like covered like so, and then on this side it doesn't have that. But in my opinion, I think they would be the same. I don't know. Whoever made this probably knows their stuff, but that's such a small detail. I'm gonna keep it just like this because extruding it over, like we could smart duplicate face this part, flip it over. I just don't think it's really worth it. It wouldn't take that much time, but like, I'm gonna leave it the way it is. I'm noticing that we didn't puncture this though. We're gonna have to do that. I'm getting really happy with how the results are turning out, so it's cool. It's cool. We're making good progress. Let's actually do that and then call it a day. We'll puncture this. I'm gonna duplicate this. Actually, I'm gonna delete that first. Let's just do it in one go. Let's combine these two guys, and then we can duplicate this, shift select, and isolate these guys. Yep. Let's freeze transform, delete history and everything. New Boolean operation difference. Delete history and base objects. It went all the way through. Perfect. Alright guys, that's going to call it for this part. I love seeing it from this angle now, how it's filling up. It's really cool. We're at that point now where I'm like excited about it. I know that sounds weird, but I'm sure anyone who does 3D, you know that like the whole first like maybe 30-40% of something, you're just like, oh my god, I hate this. I guess that goes for art in general. But once you start to get to a point where you're like, okay, this is starting to work out, it gets you really pumped. Like I feel like if I open up the recording, yeah, like this has been well over an hour and I didn't even notice. So this is super cool. Thank you guys for watching this part. And yeah, in the next part, I think we're gonna try and tackle this back plate. That's when we're really gonna start to get a sense of everything coming together. Really exciting stuff. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this part, and I will catch you in the next chapter. See ya.